afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dominants and submissives, slaves, whores, misogynists, non-binary, pets, and all the other ways that we identify ourselves in the lifestyle. Welcome to Unshackled's Library Education Center. We're going to be having a discussion that is going to be done in voice by Mr. Rick. Voice and text is welcomed. If you have a comment or a question at any time, please put a Q or a C in local. Mr. Rick has a lovely discussion tracker that will keep order of the comments and questions as they come in so that everybody gets an opportunity to speak. If you are shy and you feel uncomfortable using your voice even via text, please feel free to IM me. I can put your comment or question out there anonymously. The only bad question or comment is the one that you don't say or use, because that's the one that it's probably going to plague your head, and it's probably the one that everybody is also thinking. One other addendum that I want to throw in there is that the Ed Center here, the library, it's a place of learning. We are all perpetual students and teachers. We learn from each other. Sometimes we may hear things that resonate with us, and we're like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. And then there may be other times where we hear something and we go, no, no, no. The point is it gets us thinking. It's not that we all have to necessarily drink the same Kool-Aid. It's okay to agree to disagree. We just need to be respectful about it. So I'm super excited to hand the floor over to Mr. Rick. I sound like a frog. I apologize about that. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. So try not to miss my sexy voice. And Mr. Rick, it is all yours.
I thank you very much. That was a wonderful introduction. I, too, am fighting a bit of a chest cold, so if my voice goes too deep to be heard by anything but elephants, please speak up and tell me to get squeaky. So, today's topic. Maybe the biggest cliche in talking about healthy relationships in the lifestyle is how important communication is. And everybody agrees with that. And then very few people go on to take the next step, which is, okay, how do we communicate well? Everybody's like, well, communication, yay! All right, break for lunch. So no. And I am not interested in turning this into a Dom bashing session. Having said that, there are 2 or 3 generalities that people pretty much agree on. And that is, women tend to be more comfortable discussing and processing emotions, especially with someone else, than men do. And there is a great saying in therapy circles. Well, I actually think it's originally a Heinlein saying, which is that men get into a relationship thinking women will never change. And women get into a relationship thinking that the man will change. And both are doomed to disappointment. So, one of the incredibly important things about communication is recognizing that your relationship, whatever it is, isn't static. What it was yesterday, what it was in the first rush of love, what it was at the first crack of the whip, is not how it'll stay. And it shouldn't stay that way. A healthy relationship grows and changes, and we as men, especially as dominant men, are often very hesitant about recognizing change. And we assume everything's the way it's always been until we are forced to confront that. So having rambled for a while, there there is a question I'd like to ask the group, which is, in the last year, assuming you have been in a relationship, has there been a time where you have felt that you were not heard or understood when you were trying to express a problem in your relationship? I guess a 1 would be a show of hands. Yeah, this is, my wife's a marriage and family therapist. Those ones are the reason why she makes a living. So there are some very basic relationship and communication things that that good relationships tend to have, and one of the issues that comes up over and over again is that, and this isn't something intuitive, this is something people learn over time, which is the BDSM part of BDSM relationship is the easy part. You know, finding someone who fills your kinks and, you know, makes your princess parts tingle, or my princess parts tingle, you know, is awesome and easy. The hard part is the relationship part. People are complex. People's needs change. And people's needs evolve as their needs are being met. So if you meet someone and you sort of get in a relationship and you have a good dynamic going and things like that, as parts of you are fulfilled and, you know, your thirsts are being slaked, new needs and new desires get revealed and new frustrations come up and things like that. So I think every submissive at some point in their submissive life has been assigned journaling. And one thing I hear over and over again from submissives is, I get assigned journaling. Sometimes I actually even like the journaling. It would be super awesome if my dom actually read and paid attention to it. So the first question I want to throw out after 10 minutes of verbal masturbation is, hold still, I'm almost there, is what techniques, especially from submissives, have worked for you in making yourself heard when you have had trouble communicating with the dominant partner? Well, that would explain the cat. Interesting point. So Sal has an interesting point, which is that there's no answer because nothing works if they don't listen. That is certainly true. And often, especially for men, we don't listen until we are forced to listen. We don't change until we are forced to change. A common and recurring problem in relationships that involve men is that men are incredibly prone to inertia. The body at rest will tend to stay at rest. You know, if, you know, to put it crudely, if, you know, the food's on the table and the balls are being drained, everything's fine. So has anyone been in a situation where they have felt like, welcome kitten, they have found themselves acting out in ways you don't even want to act out, but you're just so frustrated about the lack of communication that, you do the sort of relationship equivalent of, start throwing cutlery just because nothing else has worked. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, okay. So that seems to have struck a chord. Does that sound familiar to people? There are, I actually consulted with my wife, who's a therapist, and with my therapist, who, surprisingly enough, is a therapist, before I did this talk, before I led this group, to get suggestions. And one of the most important things, and I realize this is a problem in SL because people often have a limited amount of time together, is finding a quiet moment to talk. If there is so much inertia in a relationship that you end up acting out just to get the attention to try to communicate that something is wrong, then that is done in the heat of the moment. And it is very hard to get a quiet place where you can talk as two adults, no matter what the power imbalance is, no matter no matter how uncomfortable that conversation is. But to be able to sit and talk as if you liked each other is often incredibly difficult when passions are running high. So the first key takeaway point about communication is to find a time and a place where you are thinking and discussing rather than reacting. And one of the problems is, especially for submissives, is, depending on the relationship, there is this huge inertia to overcome about being afraid to speak out. It's not your place. It's not, when you aren't actually crying about it or, strangling a pet because you're so frustrated, that is the least comfortable time to bring it up, but it's probably the most the most effective. And Kara has a comment.
Yes, thank you. I think the most difficult conversations are usually the most personal ones, and it's really hard to open up to somebody and meet those conflicts that you might have. It's understandable. A lot of people don't like confrontation. A lot of people don't know how to open up personally because it's embarrassing or it's shy or stuff. And it's much easier to ignore it and just, avoid that conversation than to fucking actually do it. And it takes a lot of guts just to, open yourself up to somebody. And, yeah, I think each of us need to learn our own tactics on how to get to that point, Some people use, clever, hints and stuff like that, and some people want to be more direct. But I often find that if you just take some time, say, hey, I just need a minute or 5 minutes, and just get it out in the open, let it go, and then just throw it up in the air and see what happens. I do it in real life. It's often personal, and, you got to find the right time to do it. But if you trust the one you love or whoever you're with, then it gets easier over time once you practice it. That's all I got.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And and one of the responsibilities that I was taught early when I was learning to be a dom, and a decent human being, was active listening. Even if you don't think something is wrong, especially as a dom, it's critically important to make time and safe space to talk about your relationship. To say, what could I be doing better? What could we be doing better? And an important thing to talk about when you're talking about a relationship is what I call the three people in a relationship. There's you, there's me, and the third person is us. And our relationship, after a while, takes on sort of characteristics of its own independent of us, and it's important to address what is affecting all three of those players. What I said before, especially about guys sort of assuming everything's okay. If nothing is on fire, we're fine. That is why it is incredibly important for DOMs to make a safe space where your partner is encouraged to talk about what is on his or her mind. Whether it's good or bad, whether it's big or little, whether it's about the relationship or not. And the biggest and most important part of that is rewarding your partner for speaking up. Because an enormous number of submissives have been trained out of speaking up, or had it beaten out of them, or been ignored, or been told they're being a brat when they bring up something that's uncomfortable, or just stepped on until at some point you just give up. If you get kicked in the teeth every time you try to bring something up, at some point it's easier to keep quiet. Which brings me to the next point, which is about journaling. Every sub at some point gets assigned a journal. Here's a challenge for the DOMs. Journal about times where you have missed a communication or a cue from your partner. And if you can't think of any, then you probably have a ton of them. And Sal has a question. Discussed, not necessarily shared. If a Dom, after sort of sitting down to this exercise, comes to, it should be discussed with their partner. Yes. Because I guarantee the Dom. The question was, is it assumed these journals would be shared? Thank you, Cryptic. And yes. And if a Dom is having trouble thinking of a time or a place where they were, where they missed a communications cue or misunderstood, I guarantee your partner can point you in the right direction there. Draven has a comment.
So Molly and I both journal. Even when we had a dynamic that is opposite of the current dynamic. When I was her Dom and she was my sub, we both journaled. And now that we have flipped the script a little bit and I am her sub and she is my Dom and teaching me some things so I can see things from the other side of the slash. When we journaled, of course, we both had access to each other's journal. But we had this little agreement that in the title of the journal for that day, if the very end you put in parentheses, if you put in parentheses, I believe it was DND or something of that nature. It basically meant, okay, this particular journal entry, I am okay with you reading it, but do not discuss. Means I'm okay with you reading it, but I needed to vent. I needed to go bleh, but I don't want to talk about it now that you've read about it. So you can come up with your own little private ways of allowing each other to read your journals and still have that moment where you can put it all out there, and then you put in the title at the very, at the end of the title, some kind of code or whatever that lets your partner know, I'm okay with you reading this, but I don't want to talk about it.
That is genius. Because D&D is much, much shorter than for informational purposes only. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Any venue where you are communicating your inner thoughts about your relationship with each other in a way that isn't attacking and isn't, it can even be critical, but constructively critical, is healthy. Here is another point that Doms often have a problem with, which is when early in my relationship with my wife, we used to have conversations about things that I was doing in the relationships that weren't particularly helpful. Let's put it that way. I called them Rick's being an asshole conversations. It was my pet name for it. And let me say that my wife and I fought with other people in different relationships, never really with each other. We had super intense discussions. We would get upset, but we never sort of tipped over into that, oh yeah, fuck you. So one of the ways that we avoided taking that last step while still giving constructive criticism was I had to learn to listen without being defensive and listen to painful, critical things about myself without being defensive. And the rule of thumb I learned was, if my response to what was being said was, yeah, but, or no, but, shut the fuck up. If it generated that strong a reaction, then there was probably something there. If the reaction was anything other than, where the fuck did that come from? Oh my God, what the hell is she talking about? Then the reason why I'm reacting so strongly is because deep down I know there is a grain of truth to this. And it is hurting my partner. And Draven has a comment.
Okay, so one of the most profound statements that I've ever heard in my life came from Molly during a rather heated discussion. I'll put it nicely. And she was saying things and trying to vent her frustrations. And at the time, I was listening to respond rather than listening to band, which I've since learned is a crucial feature. But I replied to one of her comments with, but that doesn't make any sense. It's totally irrational and it's pointless. I don't understand your point to this comment. It's irrational and it's emotional and, it doesn't make sense to me. And she goes, but it's how I feel. And it's what I'm experiencing. So therefore it's valid. Whether it makes sense to you or not, it's how I feel. So it's valid, and you need to acknowledge that it's valid. It was just one of the that was just one of it, and like a light bulb went over my head. It's like,
Yeah.
true. I don't understand, but it still makes it valid because it's how she feels. And I think as men, that's where we fail, because we don't take into the account that sometimes women just vocalize. Men are very A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Women can go from A to X to D back over to to 4. And we get frustrated because we don't understand where they're going with it. So we're like, you're being irrational. It's, it's not, you're being irrational, blah, 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 blah. But it's still valid. And we have to pause and let it sink in before we don't try to reply. Listen. Really listen and understand. And I used to get to the point where I would say, okay, you make a very valid point. I'm acknowledging what you're saying. And sometimes I would repeat it back to her rather than say, no, that's stupid, blah, blah, blah. I would repeat it back to her so that I would understand, so that I'm trying to understand what she's telling me by using her words as well. So, but yeah, that whole validation, it's really important.
And that actually is a great segue into something. To two incredibly valuable tools. One is, if you are afraid that you are not being understood, or better yet, even if you suspected that they don't completely understand your partner, have them repeat back to you what they heard. And ask it that way. What did you hear from what I just said? Because as you are listening, you get an enormous amount of intuitive information, you're reading tone, and the content sometimes gets lost. And the other incredibly important tool for men, I mean, obviously for everyone, but men's response to a problem is often, how can I fix it? Which leads to incredibly unhelpful scenarios like, well, you're really upset, so I changed the oil in your car because I love you. Is everything okay now? Rather than asking, how can I fix this? Ask, how can I be supportive? And that opens the door for your partner to tell you exactly what they need from you. That opens the door to say, you know what, I just need to be held. You know what, I just need to vent for 10 minutes. I just need to, shoot a man just to watch him die. Whatever. And actively listen to what they say in response. And that makes an enormous difference. Because when you say, how can I fix something, in effect, you're putting it back on them and saying, well, what are you going to do to fix it? I'll help, but, what? Saying, how can I be supportive is telling them, I'm here for you. What will make you feel better? What can guide me in how I can help you? And that is a much, much healthier response. And Molly has a comment. I'm sorry, I went on there.
Hello. Crap, I just lost my... I am on the other side of the fence currently, and I am brushing up on some dominant traits, and I am getting a really good look at what it's like to become frustrated because of a lack of communication, not because he doesn't try, but because he is in a place where words are hard to find at times. So I am getting a look from the other side, at this whole failure to communicate and how easy it is to fall into that if you're not super careful. And I just wanted to add one simple thing. I think patience is key. Draven is one of the most patient people I think I have ever met. Super patient, and he does something very important. He listens to everything that I say, not just so that he can fly off with a reply that thinks will fix it, but he listens to it all. And sometimes he doesn't even reply, but that's how I know he can really hear what I'm saying. He's not sitting there listening to me talk and in his head going, well, maybe I could tell her to do this, and maybe I could tell her to... Okay. He just listens. And that's so important, to just really listen to the person's words and try to hear from the place in which they're coming from. And it's really hard to do, but it's something that I think really requires a lot of focus, and you have to care. That's it.
That's great, and it's absolutely true. I mean, that is cutting out a space and a time to let your partner fully express themselves. You know, don't... show of ones, how many people have had a partner who, when you express a problem, the response is halfway through the description of why you're upset, the phrase, "you should," pops out of their mouth. Yeah, that is the horrible sign of... Yeah, exactly. That is the sign of addressing the situation, not the needs of your partner. Cryptic has a comment, and I will remember to read it. And while she's typing, I will also mention that no matter how close to 24/7 your relationship may be, it is often very healthy to make a half hour where you suspend the dynamic and just talk like you met, you know, like your old friends. And it is amazing, the stuff that comes up. Okay. Cryptic's comment is a great one. I'm not even going to read the first part because it's not. How do you know when they are expressing and when it's a problem they want fixed? Well, that is one of the... Thank you. That is one of the strengths of saying, how can I be supportive? Because your partner can say, well, help me fix this. You know, it's a goddamn flat tire. It's not, it's not the death of our relationship. Go get a lug wrench and let's do this. But a response like, how can I be supportive? What can I do to help? What in this moment would make things better? And what those all have in common is zooming out from what the actual issue being expressed is and getting more into addressing how it makes your partner feel. A lot of time when you have a problem, you know how to fix it. You just don't have, it just feels like too much. And you just need someone to be, to give you the, boxing corner man speech before you go out and fix it yourself. Okay, another question. Fade asked, what do you say or do after the how can I be supportive? And their answer is, I don't know or nothing. Well, a follow-up question. And this may be a sort of Dom side response, and if so, I'm sorry, but one of the things I like to do is check in about their physical well-being. You know, and it sounds stupid, but have you slept? Have you eaten? Are you hydrated? Are you, what else is happening? If you can't deal with this problem right now and I can't do anything to help you, okay. But what I can do is I can express my love and my support for you. And also what can I encourage you to do to help you be in a better place to deal with what your problem is. And so I'll get to in 1 second. There was one other tool that I really like using as a Dom, which is, it's very easy to say, I feel good, or I feel bad, or I feel meh. I often ask my partner to rate how they feel on a 1 to 10 point scale. 1 being, I feel like crap, I want to die. 10 is, I am in the process of being elevated to a heightened consciousness. Stay out of my way. And using that 1 to 10 scale for how they feel physically, how they feel emotionally, and that makes and that leads to follow-up questions like, well, I feel like, I feel like a 3. Well, okay, how can we work it up to a 4? What can we do to just nudge the needle a little bit? And it's of course a completely subjective scale, but it gives you a shared frame of reference. And yes, cryptic, it also helps the self-awareness of your partner. Okay, Celestial had a comment. Sometimes I find that it helps immensely with just their listening and letting me cry on their shoulder. Oh my God, but please don't ask me if it's Shark Week, though. But lots of times, listening alleviates most of the problem for me anyways. Really listening, that's huge. And actually, one of the totally sneaky things about the 1 to 10 scale for physical and emotional is, on the physical side, the fact that my partner may be premenstrual comes up there, but I don't have to ask it directly, so it's not incredibly insulting. So yes, and that is a great one. So that is huge. It is, and again, it's that active listening, that paying attention to the response, making your partner felt heard. Okay, Trayman had a comment.
Going back to the I don't know or nothing situation. If, in my personal experience, if that occurs, that's the time that you kind of make yourself a little sticky note, stick it on a computer somewhere or on the desk somewhere, and that's as a person or a friend or a dom or whatever, where you just kind of let it lie for a little bit and you watch, listen, see if that same emotion or that same situation kicks up again. See if there's a trigger, something, because sometimes people sincerely don't know, or, whatever. And sometimes you have to sit back and you have to look at the situation from the outside looking in. Sometimes things cannot be repaired or handled at the moment, and that's as a man. where I have my biggest issue. I want to fix it right now. The car's not running right. I need to put in new spark plugs right now. And that's the way we approach relationships.
Right.
She's not unhappy, or she's unhappy. I need to fix this now. But sometimes it can't be. Sometimes you have to be, and you have to take a step back and just kind of let it lay for a little bit. I was fortunate with Molly. It was kind of funny. One day I asked her, I said, I can't remember what was going on. I think she was building, which is something she loves to do. Molly loves creating scenes, and she gets all into it. And she was getting frustrated, so I went, are you okay? What's going on? And she went, I'm fine. Now, for me, in every past relationship I have ever been in, I'm fine means I did something wrong. She's pissed at me and doesn't want to tell me. So, got quiet because I'm like, shit, I'm in trouble. I don't know what I did, but I'm in trouble. Gave it a little bit, and then I came back to her again, and I was like, okay, so what's going on? And she's like, nothing. I'm just building. I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, pause. Something's wrong because you're throwing the I'm fine phrase at me, and when a woman throws that out, they're never fine. And she goes, oh, okay, hold on. And she stopped building, and she took the time to communicate with me, and she goes, when I say I'm fine, I am fine. Everything's cool. I am not one of those that's going to play head games with you and go, I'm fine, and expect you to figure out what's wrong. She goes, if something's bugging me, I'm going to tell you point blank what's bugging me. If your shirt is just irritating the piss out of me that day, I'm going to tell you, take that shirt off. I don't like it. I'm not going to sit there and go, I'm fine. So, yeah. And sometimes that's the thing. You have to step back, let things mull over a little bit, and then approach it later. And you have to learn your partner, and you have to learn that they're not the same as every relationship you've ever been in. Compare them to, because they're different. They are their own person, and you have to learn those things.
That is absolutely true. And one of the things that I've learned to do is, if something's wrong, or something seems wrong, and you get a nothing's wrong, ask for clarification. Is nothing wrong, or is that I don't really feel like talking about this right now, but, or I may never, ever want to talk about this, but you want me to drop it. And that's just a way to improve communication. Okay, next comment was Kitten.
Thank you, sir. And I must say that if you come across a problem that can't be solved right off the bat, take a look back and also check to see if it's a psychological issue where the therapist might become involved. And I am so lucky with my home mistress, Christy Majorling. Every time she's on, we spend 2 hours together just chatting, and if she knows something's wrong, she'll ask me. And if I tell her I'm fine, she'll tell me, "Come on, kitten, you know that fine means there's something wrong." And then I open up to her about it, and we chat, we talk it out, and she calls me a lot because she knows that's something I really need. And well, So there's something psychologically going wrong with your submissive, and she said, and she tells you a little bit about it. Be supportive of her. Don't brush her or him off. See, see if you can help them find a therapist in their real life to work on that situation. I'm done.
That is a great point. In fact, I had a deeply, really sort of traumatic experience with a partner who, when I was a young stupid dom, as opposed to now when I'm an old stupid dom, where I panicked, and fortunately I panicked in the right direction and had a deeply, deeply submissive partner who I could force into therapy with me. And I did. And learned a remarkable amount about myself in the process, but it was to deal with the initial impetus was to deal with a deeply self-destructive partner. And it was exactly the kind of situation that Kitten was talking about. Next comment. Molly.
I forgot what I was going to say, but along the lines of the last question that was presented, the room techniques a sub. There's a sub that you've used to be heard by your dom. I have always felt that the best way to approach those situations is to really just is to get their attention and have a heartfelt conversation. Something along the lines of, I'm feeling a bit off and I feel like you're not hearing me. Could we please sit down and have a conversation? I mean, really, it's just the most direct approach. Sometimes the most obvious approach really works. If they know that it's creating an issue for you emotionally, mentally, they're more liable to sit down and at least try to listen. And along the lines of what Draven said, my late husband told me a long time ago that men are simple creatures. They are not mind readers. If you have a problem, it is your responsibility to bring it to their attention. I mean, I don't mean if he's made you upset, I don't mean, go and trash the house and then wait for him to come see you over it. That's not going to work. But really, truly, if you have a problem, he can't read your mind, can't read each other's thoughts. You really it's your responsibility as a human, as part of a dynamic, as a good submissive, to bring these things up. And the same can be said for the dominant if he has an issue. If you're doing something wrong, he usually doesn't have an issue pointing that out to you. We kind of have to reverse it and do the same. I'm having an issue. I need your guidance. I need your intellect. Can we discuss this? It's very important. I mean, it's the stepping stone of making your relationship work, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you are heard and you are also listening. That is all.
Thank you, Melanie. And I agree. It is often more difficult with high control or high protocol DOMs to fight through to that point where you can say, look, we need to talk. That's really we all know, I'm sure everyone in this room knows at least 3 DOMs who, popped a mind and you're like, oh God, that asshole never listens. And that happens. Cryptic had the next comment, I believe. What do you do if the person says, you hurt me and now I can never ever trust you again? Where do you go when there's a brick wall like that? That is a great question. And importantly, Molly agrees. So, in effect, that's an ultimatum. That is, if you want to try to use logic, then the proper response is, might be something like, do you believe that I hurt you intentionally? Because if the answer to that is yes, then we have a bigger problem. And if the answer is no, then why are you treating this like the end of the world? This is, the callous thing to say is, life stuff, wear a helmet, but that's not particularly helpful. You can apologize for the hurt. Because you clearly care about this person and you weren't out to hurt them. A suggestion would be to ask them to explain how that hurt was a betrayal of trust. Yes, it hurt their emotions. Yes, it made them feel bad. But what did they believe about you, or what responsibility had they put on you that you so seriously betrayed? Because it sounds like this person had a lot invested in you that you hadn't necessarily agreed to shoulder the burden of. And that is a conversation that is sort of very much worth having. And I just want to back up 1 second before I jump back into to get Kitten's comment. And that was Celestial said something important, which was there are times, though, when one might be more concerned with letting him have peace than pointing out the drama that I can just swallow anyway. That's my logic in those times, that you just that there is that you sort of swallow down the hurt or the discomfort to keep the peace. The issue with that is, sure, but it is also his place to keep you happy. It is a relationship, not a suicide pact. And the issue is when you swallow down little things, swallow down issues to keep the peace, it is almost a certainty that you are doing that more often than is healthy. I mean, if it only happened once in a while and he's doing the same thing, yeah, that's the give and take you have in a relationship. If it happens often enough, and especially if it happens often enough that you find resentment building up, or there are outbursts, or there are sudden crying jags where you're just like, why can't he just not do this once? It has been my experience that is more the model, and you are not doing the relationship a lot of good by doing that. Does that make sense? Okay. Kitten. Sorry.
Thank you. Now, if that situation ever comes up, and you find that your girl or boy in the dominant has trust issues, try to get them to calm down so you can talk to them about the mistake you made. Because that's going to be absolutely vital. Don't go jumping at them by trying to apologize right away. Sit down, find it, and ask them questions. Talk to them about what did I do wrong and everything, and can we fix this? 9 out of 10 times they're gonna respond properly back because you're not pushing for anything. You don't want to push a submissive that has trust issues. I know for a fact that I do have trust issues. And my trust is still very fragile right now because I worked them out a couple years ago, but I'm still not quite there yet. I was still working them out with my therapist. But the thing is, take your time. If you made a mistake, don't try to apologize. Try to talk to the submissive. And especially because, they do have trust issues. Because that's going to trigger them right away so badly, it's not even funny. So try to get them to calm down. Find a way of getting them to maybe meditate, to do some deep breathing exercises, or maybe do some meditation. So that's the best way to do it. Try to get them to calm down, to relax, so you can talk to them gently, but don't push anything, because you go pushing for an apology and say, I apologize. And you're ignoring the fact that they have trust issues, even though they told you they have trust issues. That's not going to do any good, because the apology will have to come after you guys talked out. I said, then you can say, I apologize, will you forgive me? And that's submissive going to say yes, because you were helping him or her to level out, to get into a space where they can look at the situation and look at themselves and get them to calm down again. I'm done.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay. That is an excellent point. The one thing I would take issue with would be it is okay to apologize in a situation like that where it is unfair, but not to take responsibility for an unfair characterization. So, you betrayed my trust. Well, maybe not. But it is fine to say, I'm sorry you were hurt. That is a terrible feeling, and I am sorry you're feeling that way. Because as someone said before, that you honor the feelings. It was Draven who was saying, you honor the feelings. Feelings don't necessarily have a logic behind them. That doesn't make those feelings any less real. And speaking of Draven, you had a comment.
Okay, I'm going to address Cryptic's question, and I may get a little personal here, but not overly personal. In a situation where you are the person that has broken somebody's trust, and yes, very recently, well, not very recently, within the past 6 months, I destroyed the trust of the 3 women sitting in front of me. I did. Mainly, the biggest one being Molly. That trust was, if I'm understanding Cryptic's point of view, the person that was hurt. They're hurt. They don't care. They are just destroyed. In my particular situation, knowing how much I destroyed the trust they had in me, their opinions of who they thought I was, I simply walked away. Sometimes that's the only option. I walked away. A few days later, I got the IM, because the worst thing you can do is try to make somebody calm down when they're in that frame of mind, when they're so legitimately angry and hurt and destroyed, like you have literally ripped their soul out of their body. The worst thing you can do is try to get them to calm down, try to plead your case. Sometimes you just have to walk away and accept the fact that you were stupid and own it and walk away. in my particular case, that's what I did. I was like, yep, you fucked up, dude. And I walked away. A few days later, and, they were so angry. They removed me from the friends list. They removed me from Skype. It was a complete cutoff. A few days later, I get a call in Skype from Molly, and she was like, I don't want you to talk right now. I don't want you to say a word. Don't want you to reply. Just need you to listen to me. And she said a few things. She vented her feelings, which were all completely valid. And at the very end, she said to me, why? Why would you do this to me? Did I do something to make you hate me this much that you would do this to me? Why? That's all I want from you right now. Just tell me why. And then she told me, okay, now talk. I talked. I gave her my point of view. I apologized. And then we didn't speak again for 4 weeks. Sometimes that's just the way it happens. And after those 4 weeks, I got another little message. So sometimes if you screw up so badly, there is no fixing it. And sometimes you get lucky and the other person wants to talk, but you can't force it. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, that's a great point. That part of being responsible, part of what I call paying rent on the air you breathe, is owning your shit. The only way to be emotionally healthy is to sort of keep your side of the street clean. And sometimes you just fuck up so badly that all you can do is apologize deeply and leave it to the other party to decide what the next move is, because you have abrogated your right to have a say in the next move. Next is Molly.
I just wanted to add real quick. A wise person pointed something out to me. I won't mention any names, April, but pointed out a very, very important key factor when dealing with somebody who has done you wrong, or in this case, lost your trust because of a lie. You have to look at the person and from where it came from. One of her friends mentioned something the other day, that it is dependent upon the person and their agenda. Did this happen out of sheer malicious intent? Or did this happen because you were confused and emotional and it was a desperate move? You have to look at the intent with which that person lost your trust. Did I lie to Willow about my real name because my real name's Gertrude and I just didn't want to cop to that? I didn't lie to her and say, my name is Anna instead of Gertrude because I wanted to hurt her. I just did it because I was insecure and I didn't mean any harm by it, and I just thought, it would be better if my name was Anna. So it's really, I think it's important, and April pointed this out to me, to know the motivation behind the offense before you can judge it. And one other thing, I really think if you're going to forgive somebody for doing you wrong, it is important that you absolutely and completely forgive them. And that means you don't throw it in their face every other day for the next 10 years. You forgive it. You don't forget it. But if you can forgive it, then you do so completely. And you have to let it go in doing so. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, both of you. And that kind of sharing and the importance of that kind of sharing is sort of the best and highest purpose of these kinds of discussions. So thank you very much. I think this is about the end of the allotted time, but does anyone have any last comments, questions, concerns, terms of service violations, contract hits they want to take out, whatever? Well, that's very sweet. Thank you. uh, I think I've covered most of the big issues for today's, except for perhaps one other, which is what was that? I missed that last part. About the police. And this was a question actually to throw out to the group, which is the flip side. Does anyone care to share their best communication moment in a relationship? Like if you're a sub, that one moment where your dom was like, "Hey, what? You seem kind of off," when he'd like never done that before, and you're just like, "Oh my God, where did this guy come from?" And okay, Willow has one. Great.
It's actually not in a DS perspective. It's with one of my kids.
Great.
And my kid had to tell me something that was really horrible to hear. I mean, gut-wrenchingly. No parent ever wants to hear it. You would sell your soul 50,000 times to make it not true. And I wanted to say no, 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 because it was more than what I could hear. But I had to stop, because if I had done that, it would have put up a wall where then he could no longer speak to me. And, oh, it's okay. It is. It's not a sad story. It ends up being an okay story. But if I had done that, it would have stopped him from talking. And in that moment, I knew that I had to just actively listen. I had to just take in everything he had to tell me. And when I didn't have an answer, because I didn't have an answer, I had to let him know I was there and present, and I'll hold your hand, and I've got you. And it's okay to feel this way, and we'll figure it out. And it was a humbling moment, because of course you're calm then when it's your child, you know, okay, I've got it together. Then later, when they leave the room, or you can kind of go, oh my God, and you kind of let all the emotion kind of go through you. And it was a humbling moment, because when push comes to shove, we're all capable of being what we have to be to the people that we love most. And you just do. You actively listen. You love. You're unconditional. You support. It's not about that TV-inspired soap opera moment that we see where everything's fixed in that moment. I hate you. I hate you. I love you. I love you. It's great. And, you know, then the doves fly off in the sky. No, that's not life. And it's okay. And that is me done.
Thank you. That is a great example. Celestial. Okay, yesterday, Ethan was wicked quiet all day, hardly talking. And I, of course, get in my own head and make up all kinds of reasons as to why he's not talking. Finally, I told myself, just freaking ask him, dumbass. And I did, and his answer made perfect sense. But he told me because I asked that I should always ask and don't just worry. We would not even have had that talk if I didn't go out on a very big limb and outside my box and ask him or communicate my concerns to him. Yay. It's an excellent one. And Kitten.
Oh my God. When I first came here to Westville, I was an absolute hot mess. I mean, zip trust, a lot of anger, and if anybody even started talking about college, I would want to rip their heads off. And I meet up with Mr. Kitty, who was a, and she has me pop over to her sim, which she owned at that time, which was for women only. Because I spent the first 2 weeks on a sim right where it was like I was being treated like a piece of meat. And I tore up so many Dom's asses, and I am not even funny. But what happened is, after we started talking, she gave me a safe place to come to. And I started feeling comfortable. We talked almost every day, and then, even though she knew all my issues, she still took me under her wing as her submissive. But she didn't try to collar me or anything because she knew about my collar, about my issues with the collar. So, and we even compromised on our limits because she said she's into things that she doesn't want me to get involved in because she knows that would trigger a lot of me. So it was all really cool, and she really helped me a lot with my anger. God, I thank her every day for that. I don't know where I would be right now without her. And that's the truth. All I can say is thank God I met up with her. Otherwise, I'd be still back to where I was instead of being able to grow and be as I am today, very trusting of my mistresses, being able to really accept the collar, because the one I'm wearing right now, my mistress Christy picked out for me, and I've grown a heck of a lot in myself thanks to all my mistresses, because I'm poly. And my mistresses know exactly how I am. And they also know one thing too, that I'm also very protective of them. That's the truth. Anyone messes with them, it's going to be like open warfare with me going after them. And I'm done.
Thank you for that, Kit. Who's next? Carr is next. It is. Sorry, Huggy Bear.
Yeah, I didn't hear you. I got damn washer and dryer going on back here. So.
No worries.
I don't know, I thought I was pretty proud of myself about communicating. I'll share with everybody just one real quick. It was a couple weeks ago. My wife crashed. Her car died out on the busiest hour of traffic, rush hour, on her four-way intersection. The poor thing was freaking out. The battery died. She had no AC. She was crying. She was paranoid. She was mad. And, she finally got me to show up. I calmed her down with a cute smile and said, look, just relax. I got this, And I got her friends to give her a ride home, and I took care of the situation. It's just to see how a situation can freak somebody out like that and don't know what to do, to lean on somebody and to call someone you trust to help you. It makes all the difference in the world. I mean, it could have been a really bad day. It was like the hottest day ever to 110 degrees. I got this. And yeah, that's good communication. I'm done.
That and that you nailed something on the head there, which is sometimes the best thing you can do, dom, husband, sub, wife, pet, attack helicopter, however you identify, is simply be there. Just be there for your partner. Don't have to say a lot. Don't even have to do a lot. But just be present. Molly.
Sometimes you're very fortunate to meet people who are you just connect. There's just that instantaneous, we were separated from birth kind of mentality. The kind of person who knows your emotions before you've even had a chance to feel them. They're like, oh, I know where she's going. And I had a kind of an aha moment with my very bestest friend in the whole world, much like the air that I breathe, April, who we've been friends for 4 or 5 years. I don't even know. We're just family. But we went through a whole big fiasco, drama, tears, screaming, the whole 9 yards. And she said something first she didn't say anything. She just let me go. Everything came out. The really unattractive crying, the sobbing, the catching your breath, the hold on while I have to blow my nose. You've got snot running down your face, the really unattractive kind of. And she just sat there. She didn't say anything. And then after all was said and done, she's like, well, of course you could have come to me, your sister. And it just dawned on me that, without communication, you really don't have anything. And she's like, no matter what, decisions you make or whatever, I am here for you. And if you're happy, I'm happy. And it was one of those very aha moments where you realized you just have to use those skills of communication with your friends, with your children, with your significant other, or nobody knows what's going on, and then you end up resenting them because they couldn't read your mind and say, oh, well, let me help you with that. They can't help you if they don't know. And it was a very clarifying moment, a very defining moment in my life that I needed to clearly fix in my relationships if I expected to get the most out of them.
Amen, sister. You will pretty much get 0% of the needs you don't express met. And that is a very, very hard lesson to learn. And it's a hard thing to own. I mean, it's for doms and subs, it's hard for us to say, what, I need this. One of the things I'm very grateful for is I was fortunate in a lot of ways to be raised almost entirely by women and gay men. So I was raised with not a bunch of the traditional guy stereotypes. It was okay to cry. I talked about feelings. I learned the correct response to a hideous felt is, oh, honey, someone lied to you. I mean, the really important things in life. And so that's always served me in very good stead. I mean, my wife likes to say I came to her pretty trained. But there is that, there is an enormous social disincentive to express honest feelings and needs in a relationship And it's funny because women are encouraged to express those feelings among themselves, but not to the partner who can meet them. And that is an incredibly unhealthy thing about our society. Okay, if nobody else has any more comments or questions, I think we're... Oh, wait, Molly has a comment. Lay it on me.
I just wanted everybody to be quiet while I told you what a wonderful discussion this was and what an excellent job you did, and asked you, when's the next one?
Very sweet.
Will you do Sunday at noon?
Yeah, I can do it next Sunday. I'll come.
Yes.
And
Yay!
please suggest topics to me. I don't have anything particularly on deck, and if there's something you'd like to discuss, or shoot me
a tip jar too. That wouldn't hurt.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear him explain the female and male anatomy. That'd be fun.
Really slow.
Okay.
Rick, you can talk about it, don't you? We just want to hear you talk too.
It was a great discussion. It really was.
Thank
and thank you so much.
Now I'm all blushy. Stop that.